Good afternoon and welcome to one of our featured webinars. We are super excited to have you. My name is Patrick Carver and I'm the CEO of Constellation Marketing, and we've got, I think, a really essential webinar for you on some information that I see a lot of law firms not getting right and is really a big challenge to their growth. So we are a digital marketing agency. We're working with 85 law firms, but we can only get you part of the way, right? So we can get you all of the leads in the world, but if you are not converting those leads, it's a lot of wasted money, time, energy, and it really is going to hamper your growth as a law firm. And one of the big differences I see between firms who are just kind of getting along versus firms that are really thriving is they have a very dialed in intake process and handoff from those leads to get them to that stage of being a customer. So today we are thrilled to be joined with LegalSoft. We partnered with them because of their track record in the space of legal hiring. We're really excited to have them on. We've got gentleman Nick Salazar, who's going to be joining us today, and basically we're going to cover a simple path for you to get more clients, and then how to really optimize after those leads are coming in. So just want to give a quick shout out to Nick and welcome you, and maybe you can just share a little bit about LegalSoft and a little bit about your background. Welcome.
Thank you, Patrick. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Salazar. I'm a practice consultant here at LegalSoft. And essentially what we do here is we optimize and we strategize with law firms, and we essentially help them streamline their processes in terms of staffing. Sometimes we also integrate AI into the processes. But really, our focus here today is how we can help law firms essentially improve their intake process. So a little bit of background about LegalSoft. We have about 6 global offices. We work with about 1,000 law firms, and we have approximately, I want to say maybe around 1,500 virtual assistants placed with our clients. So that's pretty much what we do here. And really, we want to see how we can improve intake and essentially improve all processes. Because as you know, the intake is the essential heartbeat of any law firm. You can get as many leads as you want, but if you don't have the intake team to handle that, then it's just really flushing those leads down the drain.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate that. And I'll cover a little bit more about, where I think you guys provide a lot of value in terms of that handoff process between somebody who's interested, looking around, doing some window shopping between other law firms, and then how you can actually help law firms close the deal and get more out of their marketing spend, make it 10x more valuable without spending more on marketing. And some advantages I'll also share that I think you guys bring to the table compared to maybe hiring for themselves, law firms going out and trying to place somebody themselves, or different scenarios. So let's get into it. So we are going to walk through the full process that turns strangers into signed cases, and where most firms unknowingly lose revenue along the way. And I'll share what I've seen after working with hundreds and hundreds of law firms is that we often get our clients at the point where they are existing almost completely on referrals. So they are getting to that area of like $200,000 a year, 300, something like that. It's a lot of willpower. It's a lot of just kind of like brute force, giving, doing friends, getting referrals here and there. But the problem with a lot of that is, like, if you have ambition to grow, that you can't really exist on this like inconsistent roller coaster of some months it's great, others are not. There's no real predictability to that. And so that's where we come in, and we're able to help you add new cases. We do a lot of SEO work now, geo or AI SEO work, advertising. We build websites. We do all this stuff to basically help you get more real estate on the internet when people are out there searching for you. Then we're able to get leads, we're able to help you get more cases, and you kind of hit this other plateau, or this stoppage, where you're getting a bunch of leads, but you're not really converting as much as you could. And those cases, some of those that are coming in are not actually manifesting and going to other law firms out there, simply because they're doing this one kind of easy thing that you can be doing as well. And Nick's going to tell you exactly how to do that in just a minute. So let's talk about the 4-part client acquisition system. We're going to talk about why clients or why law firms are losing 30%, 60% of potential cases, how to scale without being overwhelmed, and when to invest in visibility versus intake versus staffing. All right, so my humble recommendation: turn off your phones, get dialed in just for a few minutes. We're going to make this a really quick but powerful webinar so that you can get as much value. And if you're interested in getting a recording, we will have that as well. Melissa from our team is available if you want to put anything in the chat that you are looking for in terms of getting an audit from our marketing team, or you can get in contact with these guys over at LegalSoft. Please put your name and information in the chat, and we'd be more than happy to make that happen. So I want everybody to think about this question: if your firm started receiving 30% more leads in the next month, would that be exciting or overwhelming? If you're like most firms, it's probably a little bit of both, because what we see is that when a bunch of new leads start happening, we often get a response from our clients, or we figure out in the data that, wow, they have this whole new group of leads that they didn't previously have, but the amount of people that they are converting is not proportional to what we would see or what we would hope to get from that. And that's typically a breakdown in the intake process, or the handoff during that, and it's happening. And we get into this discussion a lot with clients who don't really have the back end ready to fulfill this. We'll review that data with them during our reconciliation process at the end of the month. And a common thread that we notice is they're getting more leads. These are qualified leads, people looking for services, but they are not picking up the phone. They're not returning calls. They're waiting days before they're returning emails. And in the past, they didn't really have to worry about that, but that is literally like setting money on fire, because if you are not reaching out to these people and really giving a white glove, amazing customer support experience, you are just burning cash. Because as you know, the legal space is so competitive, and not just in personal injury. You've got venture capital money coming in. You've got the Morgan & Morgans of the world who are expanding into every state. They are putting serious money into your market. And so you have to put your best foot forward as soon as somebody shows interest in your firm. So the first thing you want to think about when you start investing in marketing is, okay, are we set up to actually handle the volume coming in? And this is a really important statistic that Clio put together in terms of how people are finding lawyers and their experiences with this. And the data is showing us that the vast majority of people, once they reach out to a law firm, are not having a good experience. They would not recommend the firm that they reached out to. And that's basically for a simple reason, which is they did not get a response back. They left a voicemail, they sent an email or sent a message on the website. Nobody was there. Maybe they went on the website, started a chat, nobody responded, right? It's such a basic, simple thing that can be fixed, which provides such a high value to the people that you are, to your firm, and to the growth of your firm. And the next piece of data I'm going to show you is absolutely wild, and it shows you, how easy one little tweak to your system and your infrastructure can provide such a large value. So right now you're probably feeling these pain points, or you're going through this at the moment if you do not have your intake dialed in and you do not have the proper support staff for your team. Because if you want to try and continue the way you built your firm up to a certain point, you hit this plateau where if in the past you were always the person chasing the leads, you are the person calling people back. I don't have to tell you how challenging that is when you are an overworked, stressed out business owner. It's tough. It is absolutely tough to go and follow up with calls, keep tabs on all of it when you are bouncing in and out of court, you're going to your kids' practices or games. It's just almost impossible for you to do that. And any time gap in there is going to be extremely detrimental to your ability to close those people who are coming and looking for your services. So if you are feeling this, you are getting leads but you're not getting that consistent growth, right? Some months are amazing, others are not. And if you have started to invest in marketing and it's going well, you may be getting a bunch more leads, but you may be running into a problem where you are giving people on your team who are not really trained to be intake specialists. If you are giving them that job, they may be overwhelmed. If you are doing this for the first time as a law firm owner, you are probably not going to be that good at delegating and training for this simply because you haven't done it before. And a common theme that we see with law firms is that if you have one person on your team who's, kind of in this utility player role where they are a receptionist, they're also in charge of following up with people and trying to convince them. They're also maybe doing a little paralegal work. They're doing all of these different things. Very hard for them to simply become an intake specialist overnight. It is a specific skill set and type of person you want to go for. Nick's going to cover that in a little more detail about the kind of the specialty or the specific types of skills and things you would look for in an intake person where you are going to get the most value. And this is kind of the overall point I'm trying to make with all this, is that if you don't address this systems problem or this infrastructure problem, it is going to mean more stress, more frustration, and then ultimately more money down the drain. So let's talk in depth here about what happens when a client is out there looking for a lawyer. The most common path that consumers are taking to find a lawyer, and this is stuff that you probably already inherently know, but I want to share this again so that you see where the data is, what's actually happening out there, and not what you are seeing in your email inbox with people who are sensationalizing things and trying to get you to buy things, or saying things like, SEO is dead and it's only AI search now. Let's try to break down what's actually still happening. And the common pathway for the majority of people out there is that they are going to pick up their phone and search for lawyer near me, or criminal lawyer, Scottsdale, Arizona, or family lawyer, Toledo. And if you are not showing up there in that real estate, whether it's ads, Google Business Profile, or in the organic listings, you are basically out of the discussion, right? You are more or less invisible. And so that is the first and a step, and a critical one. This is what we help with. We have been able to help hundreds of law firms. We're working with over 85 right now. We've generated over $50 million in revenue for our clients, And our specialty is helping law firms, specifically solo and small law firms who want to grow, you want to go from just existing on referrals and kind of roller coaster business cycles to actually getting consistent wins month after month. And this affirms what I'm saying, which is, unless you have lawyers in your family, your friend's a lawyer, people, you are basically, a vast majority of people are going to just go online and start their research there. Even if they know somebody or heard somebody and do get a referral or someone shares that info, they're still going to go online and try to do comparison shopping. They're going to look around. They're going to check what your website looks like, see if you have experience, if you are trustworthy, those sorts of things. So it's so essential that you are investing in that as a business, because otherwise you are going to just exist on referrals, which is not the best way to, or any way to grow your firm. And this is kind of one of the things you would look at where you would try to get visibility is in the Google Business Profile. And one of the kind of things or hacks that you can implement today without any marketing agency, that gives you a disproportionate benefit in this space to help you show up more often, is going to be getting reviews consistently and making sure you respond to those reviews. That is going to give you an outsized benefit by trying to get a review every single week, responding to it. It is going to be the best way to get you increased visibility when someone picks up their phone and they're searching for a lawyer. They should be finding you above your competition. So a common misconception or thing that I hear about when I'm speaking to law firms is, they start to discuss how they are maybe not doing as well as somebody else in their space. And they start to get into, well, I've been doing this for 30 years. They don't have my credentials. They aren't getting the best results. I win more cases, that sort of thing. And that's great, but that really misses the point with kind of the modern landscape and how you actually go, how people are deciding on which lawyer they choose. And often it's not the best lawyer, but it's the one who is the best advertiser, the best marketer, and the one that they feel confident in, which is more about the narrative and the storytelling that law firms are doing, and ultimately acquiring that visibility through search, through ads and placements on Google search. They are not experts in law. They don't understand the difference between someone who has won a peer-reviewed award. They don't understand the benefit of having 30 years being located in the specific county where maybe you have the criminal charge. They don't know all of that. That is nuance that and seems like a common knowledge. They do not know that, and so you need to be earning their trust. And you do that a couple of ways, right? You do that with the reviews, like I mentioned, but you also do that with the customer service experience. And this is where we're going to kind of shift to the intake portion and the relationship building, the customer service component of this call. And what we're going to stress, and what I'm stressing, is that as much as you invest in acquiring leads, you need to be thinking about and improving your intake process, the handoff. And a key component here is response time and the process you use when you are trying to get people and convert them to be a client, because they have options. They've got more options than they can count. And if you do not answer them, they're going to move on. This happens all the time. And what we know and what we see is that people who have a better mousetrap, so to speak, they've got options to connect with people instantly. They are optimizing their website for conversions where it's easy to contact. They show how to get to those next steps easily. they are going to give themselves the better opportunity. And this stat is super revealing with another marketing agency who did a study of this. And what they did was they called a ton of law firms and tracked, how what the response was like. And only 25% of firms responded to web leads within 5 minutes, which is wild, because you will get the absolute best value if you can contact people within 30 seconds or anything within 5 minutes, right? Sometimes that's not always possible, but if you can follow up with them, you have such a better advantage than other law firms out there. And this is this time increment is backed by data that has come through from the Harvard Business School, who supports this. And I don't have the data on hand, but essentially, the more you follow up, or the quicker you follow up, the better the outcome. Because in your mind, you may be thinking that, well, they reached out to me, so they should remember if I call back in a couple hours who I am, and be ready for that. So I have this time to burn. I can do it after my court appearance, things like that. But I think what a lot of people don't think about is that at the same time they're reaching out to you, they're maybe reaching out to 3, 4, or 5 other law firms. And if they speak with somebody who starts to engage them, they build that confidence in, they're going to choose them because it satisfies their need faster, and they are not thinking about their selection in maybe the way you think about it, right? That it's going to be this slow, deliberate, really research-based process. They're really probably looking for quick. They don't have a long attention span. They want results fast, and so the first person who kind of feels right is going to get that. So your goal should be to try to get to these people within 5 minutes of when they reach out, and then have a great follow-up procedure where you are contacting these people probably 5 times over 5 days, and using different vehicles if they are not getting in touch with you, like email, possibly text if they give you that information, and calling back, right? And potentially calling from different numbers, because if they have iPhones or other services, those systems are getting harder and harder, or may falsely show as spam or something like that. So we got to be more resilient, and we have to be a little more creative, but punctuality is the main point here. So when you can't handle the growth, often people will point back to the marketing and say, well, we're not closing these leads. But as I mentioned, when we do the reconciliation, we often see, well, people are not calling back the leads. They are not responding to emails, things like that. So it's a dual area that there's 2 things that are required to get the most value out of this. And kind of with that, I'd like to transition then to Nick from LegalSoft, who's going to talk about this in more detail. And this is a great baseline for you to start thinking about your own firm and kind of when this makes sense. But if you are thinking about this, thinking about getting someone to be an intake specialist, someone who can fill that role, and it's my contention that basically every firm should have this as soon as they start getting a decent case flow. You should have somebody in your office who is absolutely, their role is to follow up on leads and get them to the buying stage, or get them to, in our vocabulary, a proposal or a consultation. And so there's a couple ways to do this where you could have your intake person actually handling like an initial consultation, kind of a needs analysis, and then bring in the lawyer to handle the closing, so to speak. But if you are a firm owner, or you have you're a part of a firm, you should not be handling that outreach. You should not be going in and trying to find those people over and over, trying to contact them. It's a waste of your time. And very quickly, you will see, and if you do the economics, you will see that if you can convert basically one more client per month, you are covering the expense of somebody of a hire who can actually handle that for you. And then anything from there is profit. So the economic case for this is huge. And Nick's going to talk a little bit about this. So with that, I'd like to reintroduce Nick and LegalSoft. And so if you came in late, LegalSoft is a hiring agency specifically for law firms, and I think they have a lot of value for this conversation because when you are hiring someone for intake, if you are a smaller solo and you haven't gone through the hiring process before, it can be a little daunting. And let's be honest, if you're hiring someone for the first time, or you haven't done a lot of hiring in the past and training of those employees, it's very challenging. You probably don't know what you're doing. You're going to bring them on, kind of tell them what you think the job is, and then let them go do it. But to get success out of employees, you really need to have strong training, strong pathway to audit those results, lots of ongoing communication, ongoing training, things like that. LegalSoft provides an incredible benefit here in that they are able to help you connect with people who already have a lot of that legal training. And so Nick can speak about this, how it's a much better usage on your time, your resources, and ultimately you're going to get a better outcome than if you were to just go put an ad up, on one of the hiring sites and kind of hope for the best. So a lot of advantages here. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Nick, who is going to share a little bit about himself, about LegalSoft, and talk about the leak that most law firms have. So with that, Nick, welcome, and let you take it from there.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Hi, everyone. As Patrick said, my name is Nick Salazar. I'm with LegalSoft. I'm a practice consultant here, and really my role is as a practice consultant is I help law firms integrate not only intake staff but any type of staff into the firms. But of course, the intake is the heartbeat of the law firms. So there's many types of ways how we can help integrate intake staff. For example, if you're a contingency-based firm, you really want a virtual assistant or an intake person to have experience in those types of that type of law. So, for example, if you're a personal injury or workers' compensation or mass tort or anything similar, where it's a contingency-based, you really want the virtual assistant to be understanding of the qualifications of what's needed to essentially convert the potential client into a signed retainer. Most of our, if not all, virtual assistants come from a legal background. So they may be out offshore, but they all have worked in previous law firms. So in respect to the leak, so let's talk about personal injury, for example. Let's say personal injury as an example. So let's say I'm driving home after work, it's rush hour, and someone rear-ends me. Let's say it's 6 o'clock at traffic. The average law firm closes by 5. So if I'm going to call a firm, I'm calling and I'm hitting a voicemail. I'm not going to receive a response until the next morning. But for me, I'm just going to go down the list until I receive a live person or until I receive someone I can talk to. And that's really where you really want to focus. You want someone who can essentially cover the after hours, but also give you the 24/7 coverage that a firm should have, especially in personal injury, since accidents can happen at any time. They're not limited to the business hours of just the firm. Patrick, if you could go to the next slide, please. So like I said, after hours is very important. Lunch coverage is important. And you really want someone, like I said, who has experience in the area of law that you're practicing. Most of our VAs, most of our virtual assistants come with that experience built in. And not only that, but we also train them and onboard them into your firm to be familiar with the processes and everything like that. For example, I'm working with a firm right now who I'm trying to integrate a 24-hour system, whereas they have let's say an A team, an A intake team, where they handle during business hours, a B team, which is, from 5 to 9 or what have you, and the C team, whose job is entirely focusing on the leads who have not answered the phone or who are just hard to reach. You really want someone dedicated in each position to focus on the leads you haven't touched, the leads you haven't reached out to, and in my opinion, I think you need to have at least a 5-day touch point. From day one, you need to call, email, and text, and that's what we train our virtual assistants to do. On day 2, email and text, and day 3, day 4, day 5. But the point is that you really want someone to constantly touch those leads, because the majority of the success rate falls within the first 5 minutes. If a potential lead calls and doesn't get anyone, you have 5 minutes to either call that lead back or it's essentially gone. And that's why it's really important to have someone on standby, and just to make sure that they pick up and qualify all potential leads that are coming in through the firm. You can go to the next slide, please, Patrick.
Yeah.
So like I said, the speed to lead, it's very important for someone to... Let me start by saying this. We live in a day and age where instant gratification is the leading cause of everything. Let's say you're a potential client and you call a law firm and you get voicemail. You're not going to stick around and wait for them to call you back. And that's the reality of it. Most clients, if not all, want to feel their needs addressed. And if they're in a dire situation, like I said, in personal injury, for example, and they just got into an accident, they want to call someone and they want to know that they can be helped immediately, because it's a shocking event. If you can go ahead and next slide, please. So, like I said, the follow-up is very important, mainly because you want to make sure that the leads are getting touched and the leads are essentially working. You don't want to drop a lead after day 1, because that's money left on the table. And that's money given to your competitors, or that's money just being thrown away, essentially. And especially when you spend money on marketing, every dollar and every dollar spent counts. You really want to focus on how much a client costs the firm. So let's say, for example, I'm going to use my market, for example. I'm based in Los Angeles, and for personal injury, the average cost of a client for a retainer is about $2,500. Now, let's say, obviously, if you're spending $2,500 for a client to come into your door or for a client to get signed, imagine how much money you're wasting by not following up on those leads. That's why it's very important to have a system in place, either a 24-hour coverage or someone who can act as a backup and act as a qualifier for these leads that come in. You go to the next slide.
Nick, real quick, I just wanted to kind of get your take on something. I've talked with folks who, kind of have the response to something like this. They would say, well, I'm a good enough attorney, they should know to choose me, right? That if they are looking for quality, right, I'll kind of let them decide. I shouldn't really have to do follow-ups and stuff like that. What's your answer to that, or what would you say to somebody who's sharing that kind of idea?
Well, usually I'd say, well, that's the great point of view, but unfortunately, the average potential client won't think that same way. They want they may be doing the research, they may be looking for social proof, but they can't wait. And nor should you be able to, you as an attorney shouldn't be taking time out of your day to do these, in my opinion, low level tasks. They should be delegated out to someone who is qualified, someone who understands how the firm works, and someone who can sell on your behalf. I know we all like to think that I'm my own best salesman when we advocate for ourselves, but realistically, as an attorney, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be on the phone selling yourself. You should be doing what you're doing, which is essentially practicing law and operating a law firm. And you don't really want to sell yourself. You should have someone else who can reach out to the potential clients and say, this is why my law firm is the best. This is the type of cases that we handle, and this is the type of results that we get for our clients. And you want someone essentially 24/7 or on standby to do that work for you. If you're just getting back to them maybe after court or whenever you have the time, you know that you're the best. But do the clients, after waiting for so long, get your response and hear, well, if you're the best, then why did it take you so long to get back to me? And that's what I usually like to say to clients who have that sentiment.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick that I think there's kind of a spectrum of how this is handled with law firms from my experience, which would be on one end of it, it's you have a receptionist, the lawyer's doing the follow-up, doing the calling, responding to emails, all of that sort of thing. And then on the other end, you have really savvy or advanced law firms who have entire intake teams, and they're using salespeople where the attorneys never talk to a prospect. And I think it's not a progression where you have to immediately go and hire a salesperson or completely take the owner of the law firm out of the business. I think you can get enormous amount of value by just trying to restrict the input or the role of the attorney just to that final closing call. In the build up to that, that's where the leverage point is for most solo and small firm owners, is if you can get somebody who's just dedicated to getting them to the point of you being able to sell, then all you have to think about in a week is a scheduled time on your calendar. You don't have to worry about, am I missing people because it's, I've got court today, or something came up, my client call went long. All of it can be scheduled for you. But, as we're kind of sharing with all the data, what that all says is, people aren't going to wait around. And so you can't be the holdup, and you can still have that opportunity to close people if you like that. But do yourself a favor and maximize your time or your value so that you have this other person who's building you up, who's sharing some of the successes you've had. And so by the time that prospect comes to you, they are already prepared to buy. Basically, they already think highly of you. They've been given past results, stuff like that. So find whatever works for you, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. Back to you, Nick.
Of course, and like I said, not all firms operate the same way. What works for one law firm might not work for another. But the point is, you really want to make sure, as an attorney, is where can your time be best spent. If you believe that your time is best spent, hopping on those closing calls, by all means, or if you believe that you want to take a more hands-off approach, by all means. The point is, you still need someone to essentially make the introduction. I know your face might be or your name might be on the law firm, but when they call in, the potential clients don't expect to reach an attorney. They expect to reach a staff or someone, and that staff's job is essentially to build you up, to say why the firm can handle this case, why the firm is the best choice. And you really want someone to qualify these potential leads to make sure that by the time they reach you, they're not a waste of your time, and they're an actual viable case that you can take on. that the case screening process is very important, because you don't want someone who is essentially, I don't know how to explain it other than to be so blunt. You don't want someone to waste your time. And especially as a time, if you're a contingency-based attorney or if you're a fee-based attorney, your time is averaging around $250 an hour. And if a prospect comes in unqualified, not sure what they're looking for, and by the time they reach you, you probably just missed out on $250 worth of your time. That's why it's very important to have an intake team who can qualify, and not only that, but understand the type of cases and how to essentially sign them up, or how to prepare them by the time they reach you as the attorney. So the no measurement leak, most solo and law firms can't answer is, how many leads do I have? How many leads do I sign up? And it's honestly, it's a funnel. So think of a funnel and think of all the leads that come in through the top, SEO, online, social media, referrals, past clients. And as it trickles down, you really want to start in figuring out what's my conversion rate. So in my experience, the average conversion rate for firms is about 18%. And it's average. And really where we see the top firms excel is they fall into the 25 to 35% in conversion rate. And that's essentially out of every 10 clients, they get, 2 to 3 clients signed, which is it's pretty good. And that's really where you want to be. And that's really where you have the most competitive advantage. The reason why the firms are at 18% or the average is at 18% is because, they operate, for example, at a normal business hours. They don't take calls after hours, or they don't take calls on the weekends. And as an attorney, who wants to work on the weekends, or who wants to work at who wants to take a call at 9 o'clock? Which is why having an intake team or an intake staff ready to attend those calls to capture those leads, it essentially will pay for itself. Let's say you're a personal injury attorney and you get a truck accident case at 2 a.m. in the morning. That's a potential $1 million case right there that essentially pays for itself. It all depends, of course, on the CRM system. Whichever CRM system you use will give you a more accurate report. But we see that most firms don't understand or don't know where the bottleneck is. And that's why you really want to come in and see how many leads am I getting? Of those leads, how many show up to the consultation? From the consultation, how many do I send out a retainer? And then from that, how many retainers do I sign? And that's really the basis of where you want to essentially measure yourself. It's like taking a pulse check for your firm, so to speak. We have another Clio study here as well. Client-facing tech, firms that use client-facing tech earns at least twice as much revenue. And I see this. I see this pretty often. If the firms who are more advanced in, integrating, let's say an AI intake or integrating a 24-hour coverage, they seem to be better at retaining those leads. And it's the truth. You don't want, in a world where tech is so prevalent, you don't want to fall behind just because you may not understand it or just because you like to do things old school. Like I said, not all firms operate the same way, but you really want to think about where you are as a firm and where the future is heading in terms of law and how the future can help or hurt your law firm.
And I'll add to that, Nick, that I think a common not misconception maybe, but idea with law firms, best practice for us is giving the consumer multiple ways to get in touch. And so for us, that means having a form, having a call now, having a also an AI tool as well that can chat online. So you're essentially getting people in a variety of ways to interact. And it may seem silly, but the data is very compelling on this, that if you give people more options there, or all of the options, you're meeting them where they want to be met. And if you know anyone from Gen Z or even Gen, I guess, Alpha now, they don't answer the phone. They really have no interest in talking on the phone. And I think that's where we are now, is people want to be texted. They want a little more control about when they receive calls, and maybe they don't want to talk at all, right? So having tech that allows your firm to get that information and put it in your pipeline to then enhance the overall intake process, the more value and the better chance you have at closing folks through this. So we really appreciate your time and stopping by this webinar. And I want to give Nick a big thank you and the whole LegalSoft team for coming in with this, because I think, Nick didn't brag enough about what they do, but like, if you're a law firm owner and you're starting to hire for this type of thing, the economics makes total sense. If you can get typically one more case, it pays for itself. But what the value is they have a platform with people who are already pre-vetted, pre-qualified to occupy those roles with you. And I don't think he mentioned something that I think is like a very big problem for attorneys who may be hiring for this role or looking for this role, is like, if you are not trained for this, or you've not been in a firm who has a great intake process, you are totally flying blind. You've never trained somebody, and the likelihood that somebody's going to come in and you're going to be an amazing trainer for them is not high. And so why not follow the path that has already been trodden, right? Why not find somebody who already has some of those skills, understands what you need, and is coming in specifically to do a job? And that's where you can reach out to somebody like Nick, who can actually make recommendations for your firm and find people who are going to match the type of person you're looking for, but they already come pre-vetted, pre-qualified, which if you've done any hiring, the value on your time and the financial value of getting somebody who is pre-qualified, rather than getting somebody and then finding out 3 months later or a month later that they're not a good fit. They're not willing to learn. They can't learn the way you want them to, or you're spending all of your time training them and the results aren't that good. So I highly recommend, if you're thinking about filling a position on your team, or you've gone through here and you're saying, I've got a lot of leads that we're not getting back to in the first 5 minutes, we're not following up enough, then highly recommend you reach out to Nick and their team for that, or any other firm position that you are trying to fill. It's a great option. We're proud to be partners with them. So if you are looking to kind of do some analysis on your own firm, you think you may be ready to make this transition, or you just want to check out, are you optimized currently? I want you to ask for this lead capture and capacity scorecard, and it's an easy thing for you to give us some information and then get detailed feedback on your intake process and some areas, some quick wins, some suggestions that we can give, not only on the process side, but also who might, what type of person might be a good fit to fit in. And you're not going to get a big, heavy sales pitch. We are pretty low key when it comes to that stuff. If we can offer any value, whether you become a client or not, we're happy to do that. Obviously, we hope at some point you will become a client, but we are not dying for business. And so, we just want to kind of build relationships and help folks out who are trying to grow their firm. That's what we're most passionate about, is trying to help law firm owners, entrepreneurs build their business. So if you are looking to accomplish any of the things we talked about in the call today, you can book a call with us, Constellation Marketing. We are, as I mentioned before, working with over 85 law firms. We've helped those firms add approximately 50 million in new revenue for them. So if you are needing help on getting more clients, building that pipeline that helps you grow your business sustainably, build it month to month, then sign up to have a short call with us, and we can give you some great insight to figure out if we're a good fit for you. Also, you can contact Nick at legalsoft.com. My email is patrick at goconstellation.com. If you want to chat, we can send you this after the fact. Happy to give you anything you need. And Nick, any final notes or anything you want to share before we close this out and slide into the weekend?
Just want to say thank you for everyone. Thank you, Patrick, for setting this up. Thank you, you guys, for attending. We had a blast, and like I said, like Patrick said, we're here to help. Anything we can do, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you guys, and I think we're going to do this again. So be on the lookout for this in a little bit of time. And otherwise, have a great weekend and talk soon. Thanks.